Welcome to La Louisiane, conversations brought to you by the official magazine of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. I'm Managing Editor Marie Elizabeth Oliver. Today we're bringing you a very special interview with artist and UL Lafayette alum Dickie Landry about his good friend, Clifton Chenier. La Louisiane's editor, Dr. James Savage, spoke with Landry about his photograph that graces the cover of the new Valcour Records album, a tribute to the King of Zydeco, Cheniere's legacy, and that night Mick Jagger met the king. He also shares the significance of the new scholarship supported by the album that will benefit Zydeco accordion students in the UL Lafayette Traditional Music Program. A very special thank you to the Center for Louisiana Studies for allowing us to visit with Landry in the beautifully restored Roy House.
Dickie, thank you so much for doing this and joining us to talk about the King of Zydeco.
My pleasure.
Cheniere.
My total pleasure.
Your friend.
Anything from Clifton.
Appreciate that. So I think the toughest question I'm going to ask you is this one, okay? What made Clifton Chenier special? What made him a star?
What made him a star? His presence, his attitude, and his devotion to the music. I'll quote him going by saying, if you're going to be something, be something. So I guess that was his motto. He wanted to be known. He wanted to be, it was a joy to see him perform. It was a joy to speak to him. That made it special. And putting that crown on his head and going like, I'm the king. How can you dispute that?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but tell me about the stage presence. Tell me what would I see if I went to a Clifton Chenier concert? What would I experience?
You would see a man 6'9" something, gold teeth, a big smile on his face, a huge accordion around his neck. In fact, he used to turn the tie around and put the accordion out. I produced a concert in New York at Carnegie Hall with him and John Lee Hooker and Lydia Hawkins and other people, blues people. And he was the last one to come on stage. And when he walked on stage, he had a crown, and he looked like King Kong. He literally looked like he took over the stage. In the meantime, people had practically passed out. And first words out of his mouth, he says, I know I'm supposed to play this Zydeco, play some music, the Zydeco tonight, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the song Jolie Blonde. So his first song was Jolie Blonde. And the audience in 5 minutes were up and dancing in the aisle. Next day, there's 3 magazines in New York, the best blues of the night, Clifton Chenier. So he looked like a king when it came out. His presence was overwhelming.
That show at Carnegie Hall was a long show, and he was later on the bill.
Well, what happened is that you're not supposed to touch equipment once everything is set up and on the stage. Well, the people of Chicago were pretty well intoxicated, and they came and started changing everything, so the sound was a disaster. So we got a 15-minute late start, and by the time he came on, it was 12:30, which is overtime at Carnegie Hall, very expensive. But it didn't matter. He won the prize.
How long did he play that night?
45-minute set.
Yeah. That was pretty typical?
No, 4-hour set. I remember once year, one Christmas day, even day, I was talking to the guitar player. And I was telling him, remember that Christmas Eve, we played 3 jobs? Oh no, Dickie, we did 4. And at one of the dances, he gets on stage and go like, I'm so happy it all came out tonight. And his manager came up and said, Clifton, we haven't even started the job yet.
He was ready to go.
He was
ready to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it hard to stop Clifton once he started playing? Was it you couldn't?
The deal with the musicians that if you went to the bathroom, pack up your stuff and go home. It's 4 hours straight, no break, nobody gets off the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He worked hard.
He was a hard worker, hard drinker too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Did that help with the music?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well, let's take a step back.
Okay.
How did you meet him?
I met Clifton in 1972 after the filming of Les Blank's Hot Pepper. And a friend of mine who was a teacher at the university here told me I should hear this band. So he took me to the Dipsy Doodle in the swamps behind Burlesville, Henderson. I mean, in the swamps. You know. Walked in, and John Hart was the saxophone player, and he was a good friend of mine. And I was really impressed by the music. So I walked up to John and said, you think I could sit in? Well, I'll ask Clifton. So they mumbled, and Clifton and me said, we got a white boy from Cecilia who's trying to play that Zydeco. So I got on stage and didn't realize that they were going straight for 4 hours. And after 2 hours, I'm not used to playing 4 hours straight, so I was getting tired. So I started to walk off the stage, and Clifton says, hey, white boy, stay on the stage. You're doing the music well. So that's how I first met Clifton.
That's pretty high praise.
Pardon?
That's pretty high praise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anytime I had a chance, I sat in with him, mostly at Kennington and the Blue Angel here in Lafayette, and wherever he was.
Yeah. You played saxophone for 4 hours. Could you talk after you were done? Your lips must have been numb.
No, you get used to it. You know, it's like running. You get your body assumes a position.
I'm gonna just take your word on that because I'm not much of a runner.
Okay.
So let's talk about the concerts, and I want to talk specifically about this night when you took this photo, because this photo graces the cover of the tribute album to Clifton.
Right.
And you shot this in 1972. And where were you?
At Jay's Cockpit Lounge in Kennington.
Was it a big place?
As nightclubs go, you know, the attraction was the rooster fights in the back.
Say that again?
They had rooster fights in the back. They had a cockpit lounge. So after the Saturday night gigs, I was always gumbo. But this shot was, it had couple of light bulbs on stage. That was it. And we photoshopped this out for the cover.
Yeah.
But the ceiling was so low, as you can tell, that Cleveland used to put his hand on the ceiling and stretch his back and look at me and order a Crown Royal.
And you bring him a drink.
I'll bring the drink, yeah.
Bring the drink. So how many pictures did you shoot that night?
That's a hard question. Yeah. I mean, maybe a couple of rolls or maybe one roll. I don't know. Maybe one shot. I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, so what makes this picture special?
The intensity of both of them. When Clifton closed his eyes, he was in nirvana. He was gone. And Cleveland, look at those eyes, just like it was just, you know, it's an intense photograph. No, Clifton, I mean, I saw him a lot of times, and literally when he closed his eyes, he was in nirvana.
And this is the album cover that I just
without the hand bulb.
Yeah. So 2 little lights, and you got this shot.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I photoshopped some. Yeah, it's a little bit photoshopped, but
I want to talk about the concert at Verbum Day in Los Angeles.
Okay.
You brought a special guest to meet Clifton. This is 1972.
72.
Okay.
It was my 40th birthday. I was in Los Angeles during a concert with Philip Glass and Whiskey A Go Go, and I was staying with some friends of mine in Brentwood, and I show up at 4:30 in the morning. There's a surprise birthday party for me, so I walk in, and the hostess told me there's a famous person back in the back room bitching about birthdays. So I walked back there, it's Mick Jagger. So I walked up and I said, "Hey man, I heard you don't like birthdays." I said, "Yeah, man." He said, "Well, it's my birthday, be kind, like, be nice." He said, "Well, how old are you?" I said, "I'm 40. He said, "I'm 37, I'll never reach 40. And I just blew him off and I went to the party. The next evening, I'm in the restaurant with the Philip Glass Ensemble having dinner, and his manager, Earl McGrath, who I knew at the time, came to me and said, "We're in the back room. Keep one person you want and let everybody go home and come and join us." So I kept a friend and walked to the back room, and it was Mick Jagger, Malcolm Lowry, the English artist, Earl McGrath, the manager, and a couple of women. So during the conversation, Mick says, "Your accent, where are you from?" I said, "South Louisiana." Me, "Clifton Chenier, the best band I ever heard, and I'd love to hear them again." I said, "Dude, you're in luck. They're playing at a black high school in Watts tomorrow night." "Really? Can you set it up?" "Yes, sir." So we parted on, and next morning I called Clifton. I said, "Clifton, I'm bringing Mick Jagger." "Well, who's that?" I said, "He's with the Rolling Stones." And Cliff goes, "Oh yeah, that magazine. They did an article on me." So he had no idea who Mick Jagger was. So I didn't. So Mick picks me up in the limousine. We go to the school, Verbindia, and he says, "Go in and check and see if it's cool." I said, "Okay." So I walk in, and it was set up in a gymnasium, just like a Zydeco club here, with the checkerboard tablecloths, a setup, whiskey, Coke, 7, ice. And I was walking around, and I started hearing people speaking French. I'm going, wait a minute. I stopped one guy and said, "Hey, man, you're speaking French. Where are you from?" "L'Hotel." "What?" "Yeah, that man over there's from Opelousas." "What?" So he said, "Our parents came here during the Second World War to build the ships. So we grew up in Watts. So there's this contingency of Creoles in Watts." So I go back to the car. I said, "Man, come on. Nobody's going to even recognize you or care who we are." I mean, there must have been 400 black people and maybe 10 white. We walk in, nobody looked at us as we partied, we danced, had a great time. Intermission comes, introduce him to Clifton. Clifton still doesn't recognize, I think he said, "Yeah, your magazine wrote an article about it." Anyway, in Cleveland, comes over, he said, "Hey man, I want you to meet my family." So I said, "Go." So he went, came back about 15 minutes later. He said, "Dickie, they were talking to me. I couldn't understand a word they were saying." So anyway, intermission's over. People started to come get Clifton's autograph. And Mick starts to back up, and I just stay. And they walked right by him to get Clifton's autograph. And he looked, he said, "Nobody's going to believe this story." So anyway, where am I going with this story? That's how. And then last year at Jazz Fest, the Stones played, and I went to the concert. It was, to watch an 83-year-old man run around the stage like a teenager was quite impressive. The power of the, music and that person. That evening I did a concert at Chickawawa, a solo concert, and I told the story to the audience. And the next day there was a luncheon at Antoine's with Jimmy Jagger, his son, and Leslie Jagger, his daughter, and some English people, friends of ours. It was sponsored by C.C. Adcock. And they told me he might be there, he might not be there. So knowing maybe, okay, so I was late, and I get a call, well, he's here. We're having dessert right now. So I was 3 miles away, trying to get it over. And so I told Francis Parvey, let's walk. So we just beelined it through the quarter. And I walked into the restaurant from bright sunshine to a dark restaurant. And somebody mentioned Dickie Landry was in the house, and somebody immediately stood up and started coming towards me. And I'm going like, and who are you? So I recognized him and got a big hug, and we sat down and started talking about that evening in Los Angeles. And at one point I said, do you remember that evening? He says, like it was yesterday. And what else did we do? I said, you asked me if I could sing some songs. If I sing a song, tell me if you recognize it. I said, what do you mean? He says, I might write a tune and I'm plagiarizing and I'll get sued. So I said, you sang about 7 or 8 songs. I did? I said, yeah. What else did we do? I said, well, we can't talk about that. So anyway,
some things stay in Los Angeles.
That was that evening. Yeah, that's how got Jagger to Clifton.
Yeah, let's talk about that interaction that you had in New Orleans with Mick Jagger last year, because that really was the catalyst for his appearance on this.
Yeah, towards the end of the conversation, he was gone. He was about an hour and a half, 2 hour, sit down. And as we were walking out, CC was sitting by, and CC started talking about a record, and without hesitation, he immediately said, I want to sing a song. So that's how it all started. And CC Adcock picked up the ball and ran with it. So with that, because he was good friends with Jimmy Jagger, the son and daughter, and with Keith Richards' son, Marlon. So it all tied together. So 50-50 collaboration, I would think.
What does it mean for you? We'll go back to talk about the photograph for a moment. What does it mean for you to have your picture on this album?
I was quite honored because, there must be thousands of pictures of Clifton on stage. But, most of them are with his king crown and his eyes open, his big smile and everything else. This is intense. He's in, like I said, nirvana. He's really into it. You can tell that he's into the music.
You don't happen to remember what song he's playing in that?
Of course.
Yeah. Let's hope.
I wish.
Clifton left us in the mid '80s. We're getting ready to celebrate his 100th birthday. Why do musicians? If you look at the lineup, thank you, on that tribute album, it's incredible. So why do these musicians, and why do musicians today still gravitate to this man?
They respect, total respect. Yeah, for me. How can you not respect a man who traveled the world, brought music from South Louisiana all over the world? Literally.
Yeah.
So that's basically how I can answer it.
Yeah.
It's total respect from every musician on this album, and many more.
Yeah. Did Clifton get the kind of attention and respect in life that he deserved?
In hindsight, 50-50, known all over the world. I remember I was in Moscow and with a theater company, and there was a party after the production, and went to this apartment, and they were playing rock and roll, and nobody was dancing, everything else. So I pulled out a cassette, Clifton Chenier. They were dancing on the table. So his music was recognized, worldwide.
It's an international language.
International.
Yeah.
Literally, people were dancing on the tape.
It's amazing. From a cassette.
From a cassette, yeah.
So, now, I can imagine that people danced on tables at the concerts, too. That they...
If they could, they would.
Yeah.
Except around here.
Yeah. Except around here. Yeah. Well, was a Clifton Chenier show in Louisiana the same as a Clifton Chenier show in Los Angeles?
Yes, same 4 hour, same songs. Not the same songs, but basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the enthusiasm of the crowds. And
of course, always. Always. No, he didn't deviate. I mean, Clifton was Clifton wherever he went. He was not, except when he got with the stage on the crown and, I'm the king. If you think you can take it, come and take it.
And that was a real point of contention in the 70s and 80s about the monarchy of Zydeco, right? Who was the king? Isn't that
in the 70s?
Well, maybe in the 80s after.
Well, in those days, Clifton was very sick. In fact, he did a concert in Opelousas. I think it was Opelousas. It was basically his last concert. And of course, everybody wanted the crown, jealousy. And the jealousy in the Zydeco world is pretty heavy duty. So everybody was vying for the crown. And Ducey was first in line to claim this. Well, anyway, that's another story.
That's a whole different. Yes. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, we're having this interview in the tribute album because it's related to the centennial of Clifton's birth, and in June. And if you could talk to him on his birthday, what would you tell him?
Let's go get a drink, Cliff.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was easy to talk to, always a smile. 1983, my son was killed in a tragic holdup. He was working at a gas station. And I was pretty depressed at the time. And I remember going to see Clifton at Grant Street. And at intermission, at some point he came and said, Dickie, have they caught the man? I said, no. He said, they will. I said, what do you mean? He says, the man's going to start bragging. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, we got the guy.
That kind of insight.
Yeah.
Into human beings.
Yeah. He was a king. Like I said, if you're going to be something, be something. You'll be nothing, be nothing. That's basically my motto. In fact, when I did a dissertation on me, and the title of the dissertation was "You're going to be something, be nothing." That was a great interview on John Hart, his saxophone player. The Herman Fisher asked him. He said, "Mr. Hart, how would you characterize Clifton's music?" It was residential. So as an interview, I said, "John, what do you mean residential?" Well, in jazz, the changes are complicated, but in Zydeco, it's just straight lines, straight streets, blocked. There's no like Lafayette Colony and Lafayette, every street is like this.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Well, you're a musician, and how did Clifton's music affect how you play and maybe your stage?
Well, I kept both of them separate because what I do is totally 360 degrees of what Zydeco is about, or music. Mm-hmm. I used to love to sit in with bands. So Clifton was, to this day, the most enjoyable. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
What was enjoyable?
Oh, just the music itself, his energy, the band's energy. The drummer, Julius St. John, the man had bass drum, snare drum, and one cymbal. The cymbal was cracked from the hole all the way to the edge, but it was just rocking. Yeah, I mean, just, and then Cleveland with, people now with washboard is 2 spoons, right? Well, Cleveland had 4 bottle openers, on each hand, so that you get all the nuances of, not just one checka, but, different nuances of the washboard.
Yeah.
And Clifton is actually the one who invented the washboard that is used today. He went to a machine shop on Jefferson, right down the road, and had him design it and had him make it out of stainless steel.
An innovator.
Innovator, yeah.
Yeah.
Now those two, I mean, Cleveland and Clifton, they were like, inseparable. Without Cleveland, I don't think there would have been a Clifton. Who knows?
That's often the case, but then Cleveland sort of, I won't say he was overshadowed, but his brother was the star, right?
The brother was a star, which it didn't bother him at all.
Yeah.
Did not, yeah. Dickie will get me a crown.
Well, what else haven't I asked about Clifton that you think I need to know and our readers need to know about why he's special to you, why he's special to music?
Well, when you meet somebody of that stature and you're not impressed, there's something wrong. I've worked with and performed with some of the best in the world in the last 20th century. Paul Simon. Met Paul at a Beausoleil concert in Carnegie Recital Hall downstairs from Carnegie Hall. And a lot of people from Louisiana kept saying, Paul's in the audience, going to, and I'm not one who runs up to famous people. So I was walking up the stairs to go get a drink, and I said, come on, he knows friends he worked with, Laurie Anderson, Philip Glass, he must. So I went up and introduced myself, and he said, I told him about a play. He said, well, good credentials. I said, look, how'd you like the music tonight? And he went, eh. I said, have you heard the black music of the guy? He said, Zydeco. And I corrected him, I said, Zydeco. And he immediately mentioned Clifton Chenier. He said, I'm working on a project right now that I want to include his accordion. I said, how soon do you need it? He said, yeah, almost immediately. I said, well, Clifton's in the hospital. We said, are there any other bands in Zydeco band? I said, yes. So Buckley was playing at Tramps, a club in New York. He said, I'll go check them out and I'll call you in the morning. He called me the next morning and said, get me 2 more bands and authorize you to. So a friend of mine who owns Violets, Kerry Boutte, called me one evening and said, there's a great young band that's killing it right out of high school. It was Terrence Simeon. So I asked Terrence, yes, I'd like to play a pro chord. Then I went to Grand Street and heard Doocy, Rockin' Doocy, and I said, would you record with Paul Simon? Who's that? I said, he's from New York. He finally came to me and said, I'll do it. So we did the recording in Crowley with Terrence. He said the group's a little bit too young for what I want, but if they pick a song, I will sing 3 backup vocals on it, which he did. And he said, I'm authorizing it to release as a 45. Why don't you manage them, find a booking agent and a movie deal? I said, Paul, I can barely manage myself. He said, you don't have to do it for life. In fact, I did. Got him a record deal, got him an agent, and got him in the movie The Big Easy. And so about 2 weeks later, Paul drives up in the driveway, and cassettes on no CDs in those days, cassettes, and he says, "My engineer and I have decided that it's buckwheat." I said, "I have only two things to say. Buckwheat is a great accordion player. His band is so-so. Deuce is a horrible accordion player, but that is Clifton Chenier's band behind him." "Oh, okay." So about 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a call. He was in the motel in Jackson, Mississippi, on his way to Graceland. And he said, "Deuce is on the record because of the Clifton Chenier band." That's how that That's Your Mother got on Graceland.
He was on his way to Graceland.
Yeah.
In Jackson, Mississippi.
Right.
Yeah. Let's talk about that song in particular. Just talk about it.
Okay. It's all about South Louisiana. Some of the lines, we're going to the club, a club on the way to a club in New York. Everything Paul writes is the truth. There's no made up stuff. So it was all about it was about South Louisiana, and dancing with the Cajun girls, dancing to the King of Zydeco, Clifton Chenier.
I went to a concert in 98 or 99, the Cajun Dome. It was Bob Dylan and Paul Simon together.
Right.
And Paul Simon closed the show, and he played that song.
Of course.
And you would have thought that we'll talk about Nirvana for the people in the audience.
Yeah.
Why is that song, even now people ask about that song, it still means something to folks down here. Why is that song and that album?
It gives an insight to what we as people are. We respect music, we pay attention to music, and the joie de vivre kind of thing. Yeah. Standing on the corner in Lafayette, state of Louisiana, wondering what a city boy gonna do. Yeah, Clifton Chenier.
I'm going to ask you, this is maybe off topic. I want to ask you about Bob Dylan. There was a request for a question about your relationship with Bob Dylan.
I was invited to a dinner at Bulat's by Kerry Boutte, the owner, and Bob Dylan and a couple of his people. He doesn't like to meet anybody new. He's a total introvert. Well, he walks in, there's maybe 3 people that he didn't know, and 4. He immediately walks in and sees us, and he's about to turn around to walk out, and Tony Gagne, the bass player I've known for years from New Orleans, said, "Bob, as Dickie played with Laurie Anderson, Philip Glass, you should meet him." So where is he? I'm going like, "Here I am, Bob." "Oh, he must have interesting stories." I said, "Well, where do you want me to begin?" He said, "How'd you meet Philip Glass?" I said, "I'll relate this story." And at some point I said, Philip Glass and I were plumbers at one time. "Plumbers? Philip Glass, a plumber?" I said, "Yeah, we were struggling musicians, and I introduced Philip to plumbing, so we did plumbing for a while." And some of the stories, Laurie, and a little while later I said, "Man, I'd like to hear some of your stories." "Oh, they're not as good as yours." I remember, like, "Come on, man. Let's sit down and eat." In the meantime, we're eating dinner, and I'm talking about punk music to Tony Gagne. I said, "Have you ever heard Shelton?" Don't get old. Hank Williams' grandson, Shelton. I said, "I saw him at a club in Lafayette. He came to the microphone. He said, 'The first says go before you cowboys with the cowboys hat and all. The second says you're all gonna probably leave.' I didn't know what he meant. The first set was total country. gorgeous, beautiful song. He's all grunged out, ponytail down to his kneecaps almost. Second set, hair down, I mean, all just hardcore punk. Hardcore punk. And I was like, it blew me away. I said, and I love to play punk music. So I asked a friend of mine, I said, you think I can sit in? He said, well, you know the bass player. I said, so I ran, got my horn, jumped on stage, and I got the okay sign. And Bob said, well, how'd you follow them? Well, I said, even in punk music, there is a structure. I hear the structure go around once. I got it, and I follow the body movement of the musicians. We usually give cues of what's happening. Well, he said, if you can do that, my music is very structured. What are you doing tomorrow night? I said, what do you mean? He says, bring your saxophone. I said, what am I supposed to do? He says, stand by me. I said, oh, I know. I don't know any of your songs. Who tells Bob, tell him that they don't know his song? I had never played one anyway. So he says, stand by me. I said, I looked at him with a smirk. I said, I know that song, but you didn't write it. So anyway, I said, I'm going like, whoa. And in the meantime, his managers were sitting there. And that was a gasp. Who is this man? Whoa, he never asked anybody to sit in ever. What? How, you know? And I talked to Tony. I said, Tony, is he serious? Well, call me in the morning. So I called him in the morning, and he said he's been up since 10 o'clock asking if I was coming. So in the meantime, I'm trying to learn 600 songs. Anyway, I get there, I get the song list, keep an eye on, here we could tell you when, maybe a solo or something. Bob walks in, we have another long conversation. He said, take us on stage. I said, me? He said, yeah, to walk on stage. And he's got me dead center. The band's behind me, which I can't take cues, and he's to my right about 10 feet. I pick up the mic for him. There are two reviews, one great review and one really bad review. The great review, the writer talked more about me than Dylan. Anyway, he gave me a solo on every song, which never, ever, ever happened. So the first three songs I was very attentive to. The fourth song, it was like I got it. My nervousness, here I'm on stage with Bob Dylan, like I was thinking about, like, how I'm gonna get through this, and finally my musicianship or whatever takes control and go, like, let the fingers do the walking, let the mind control. So after the concert, we had another long conversation. As I'm walking into the bus, I said, Bob, I want to thank you for letting me perform with you tonight. And I can still hear his voice in my head. He's a little taller than I, with his steely blue eyes. He looks down at me and says, anytime. Yeah.
So that's the only time you played with Bob Dylan?
Yeah.
And where was that here in town?
Pardon?
That was here in town?
No, at the Municipal Auditorium in New Orleans.
Yes, New Orleans.
After Jazz Fest.
Okay, this is probably in the early 2000s, thereabout?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure. I know it's a long time ago.
That's amazing. Do you ever look back and think, wow, what an unbelievable
journey,
life?
I just really started thinking about it, realizing that, oh my God, I've worked and performed with the best of the 20th century. Artists, sculptors, painters, theater directors, theater director, not directors, director. Yeah, it hit some, a couple of years ago, like, whoa, yeah. It's been a fun ride, and it's still not over. I got an exhibition of my paintings in New York opening June 12th. I'm in a group show in New Orleans at the moment, and I had a painting show in New Orleans in October.
You're so varied.
And I'm still bush hogging.
You're still bush hogging.
My favorite thing to do.
I was going to say, of all those things, is bush hogging number one?
Well, it's not number one, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's people ask me, "Are you thinking about music and painting and blah, blah, blah when you're driving the tractor?" And bush hogging, I said, "No, the only thing I'm thinking about is keeping myself alive."
Well, as Doc Savoy said in the commencement ceremony last week, it's not, your life's not bad for a boy from Sicilia.
Not bad. Yeah. Not bad. Have you been to Sicilia?
I have.
There's a big change in the past 80 to 86 years. One major change. Coming from Bayou Teche, you either take a right, go to Piggly Wiggly, or you go to the church. Well, right on the corner, there was this abandoned gas station, mechanic shop, which had fallen apart, roof caving in for the past 40 years. It's finally gone. So that's the only change in Cecilia in the 86 years. But we got great musicians from St. Cecilia. Yeah. And a few others. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what haven't I asked you about your life, your career, Clifton? Anything you want to share with us today?
I'm just looking forward to the future. I don't know how many years I have left, but I'm going to enjoy as much of it as I can. And in response to the Clifton thing, there's a huge party for him in New Orleans at the Mint on June 25th. We're doing the party in New Orleans because at the Mint, they have the crown and the accordion. So the jazz music, that's why we chose that.
Yeah.
Or CC chose it.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask you that. Your the university where we're at today is your alma mater. Just recently received an honorary doctorate from your alma mater. This CD benefits students studying traditional music, specifically Zydeco, at your alma mater. What does that mean for you as an alum of the University of Louisiana?
It means that the music will continue for generations. There'll be a new generation every year of some young kid who probably never thought of playing Zydeco or Cajun music, deciding on a career in the music, or recording it, or writing music. Writing some songs. It's a great thing. I mean, they already have. It's working. The thing about South Louisiana, there's a map produced by some person that shows Louisiana, and every musician that were born, the bottom half of Louisiana is solid. North Louisiana, maybe a couple of musicians there. So with the scholarship thing, that'll continue the process of young kids writing Cajun music and Zydeco music and new songs. Yeah.
Well, that map, I know what map you're talking about. In North Louisiana, there's one of my favorites, Jerry Lee Lewis. You don't happen to have known him by any?
I saw him once at Grass Street.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, it was a great concert where people wanted to. My friends were standing at the edge of the piano over here, and they're like, "Come over here," and it's like, I want to see his hands.
Yeah,
I want to see his hands. So I was just standing there watching his hands the whole time.
No, I've been following, as long as I've heard Elvis, and I saw all that. Never saw Elvis, but the Beatles. I didn't like the Beatles at first. I was right freshman at UL. I was playing with a band called the Swing Kings, and we opened for Otis many times. And first time I heard him, we came to the door. We introduced ourselves. and he heard our band places. After we played, he came up to me. He says, "I want you and this trumpet player to come to say, you know my music, come on the stage." I said, "Why?" He said, "I want you to teach my old man how to play in tune." So every time he came, we had a long conversation, and sat in with the band many times. We became great friends. I remember one night after he had become very famous at the big concert in California, where he was immediately went to the top of the game. I said, "Otis, I hear you're famous now. What does fame do?" He said, "Watch this." Call a company fan, but they completely undressed him and dressed him, tied his tie and everything else. So, well, that's what fame does. Okay, all right. So the club owner goes, "Cliff, you have," not Cliff, "Otis, you have 10 minutes. The man started sweating profusely. He was sopping wet before he even got to the stage. So that's the energy that man had. And he asked me at one point to go on tour with him, but I was married and having kids at the time and going to UL and teaching, and I said, otherwise maybe I would have been on that airplane. Who knows? A little bit of my history.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Little bit.
We could do this all day.
I have many stories.
Yeah. Well, I hope we get to hear some more of them sometime.
Anytime.
All right. I think that's all my questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about Clifton or your career? Or
if you're gonna be something, be something. If you'll be nothing, be nothing. That's Clifton Chenier, King of Zydeco.
I've absolutely adored this conversation, Dickie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate you joining this conversation with La Louisiane, the official magazine of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette since 1989. Watch for the fall issue of La Louisiane for more coverage of the Clifton Chenier Centennial. And as always, check back here next month for more discussions with members of our university community.